Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to talk about how to create a responsive Android application that will work seamlessly with various devices and may look different as well. So if you're not familiar with my channel, I'll really suggest take a look at some of the videos that I make. I talk about all different technologies starting from Java to SQL to JEE, Next.js, React, JavaScript, Angular. This video does not record that you watch my previous videos, but it may help a little bit to kind of get the context. In my previous videos, I kind of talk about creating a crypto market watch using a web application, of course. And the last two application was created using JavaScript and also Java. Actually, it was Java, Struts, jQuery, and both of those used a technology called CDN tables. And it kind of looked like this. So it's basically just getting all the crypto data, and just to keep it simple, I'm just getting the first 250 entries from using the CoinGecko API. And it would refresh, as you could see, every 60 seconds, and you'll keep getting the live data. And if for some reason the server is down, there will be a local copy and it will just get it from the local copy. And of course, this thing is very responsive. You can sort, you could do all kinds of things, and you could do a search as well. Now, what we're going to do today is we're going to port this thing into an Android application, right? Of course, one could argue that you can just create a web view on Android, then you could just use a website. But the problem with that is it may not be really responsive, because for a small phone, it may not show all of these tables in one short screen. You have to uh, tap left and right. So let's see how we're going to do it. Before I start, please do not forget to subscribe my channel and hit that bell icon so that you can get notified with all the cool videos that I come up with. Okay, the very first thing you're going to need for this Android application is you're going to need to download the Android Studio. What I would suggest is get the latest one, the Hedgehog, because I created the application already using this, so the projects are going to be saved using the this format. So get the latest one, and then once you have it downloaded and installed, it's pretty straightforward. Then what you want to do is you want it to create some virtual devices. So anytime you create an Android applications, of course, you would like to test it. And if you don't have a phone that has a developer enabled feature in there, then the best thing to do is just create a virtual device. So this site was actually will tell you exactly how to do it. So after you get the Android Studio, make sure that you have at least created multiple devices. Now, today's topic will be creating responsive Android application that works with various devices like a phone and also a tablet. So what I have done already in my Android Studio, which is right here, I have created two devices, right? One device is kind of like a Pixel 7 phone, as you could see. The other one is Pixel tablet, because I just wanted to show you that the exact same application can look different on various devices, and that's how it becomes really responsive. So here is just a little peek of it. Here's my phone, and here's the tablet. So these are the virtual devices that I'm going to go ahead and run my applications on. The next step, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and copy the GitHub URL, because I already have the code for you. So get it from here, and I'll put the link in the description below. And then once you have that, go ahead and launch your Android Studio that you just downloaded and installed. When you launch it, it will look something like this. And remember, you copied the GitHub URL. You can actually get the code straight from the Android Studio's Get from VCS feature. And here, I'm going to go ahead and paste it. By default, Git should be chosen. And I want my directory to be in this, so you can choose your own root directory where you want your applications to be. And whatever the GitHub URL application is, it will make your subdirectory like that. So choose that and click on clone. I'm not going to do it because I already have it out there. So once you click on the clone button, it will automatically check out all the files, and it should automatically load the projects for you as well. Once it gets the code from GitHub and it's loaded on the IDE, it will look something like this. By default, it opens the README. and it will have all these files. There's scripts of Gradle, and there's the resources layout. You'll have Java files, and you'll have the manifest files, right? And then you can actually look at the emulators log in the logcat, and also there is a build directory that will come up as soon as I start the build. So what you can do now is go ahead, click on build, and do the rebuild project if it doesn't automatically start. And this will automatically start the build, and we'll have a build tab, and it will automatically show up in here. Depending on the speed of your machine, the build may take a while, but at the end of the whole build, you will see something like this. So once that happens, it's time to add a configuration to run your application that you just loaded. So just click on this add configuration and add new run configuration, and just choose Android app. And for module, click on this list and you can just name it. I'm just going to name it the CoinGecko API client Android. So that's it, and just hit OK, and it will automatically see the configurations show up here. And as in the beginning of our step, if you remember, we created virtual devices. So I have two virtual devices created here. One is Pixel 7 Pro, and the other one is Pixel Tablet. So it will automatically show up which tablet you want it to run on, or which devices rather you want it to run on. So I'm just going to go ahead, choose the default one first, and click on this guy right here. If you have done everything right, after some time, it will automatically launch that Pixel 7 and it will launch the application. Now this thing's a little bit cryptic. You'll have a whole bunch of tabs here, and each of these things means a different thing. So we'll have something like a device manager that will basically list your virtual devices, and the screen basically saying that's the one it's running right now. As you could see, this has been started and this one has not. So I'm going to go ahead and start the other one as well. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and select the tablet, and again click on this, either play or the debug, either one works, and it will automatically run. And as you can see, I have a second tab now, so that's where it's going to load the tablet. We loaded the tablet and it will run the application in itself. As you can see, the tablet is also up and running with the application. Now this thing could be a little tricky. So this is a device manager, and this is really small. So what I typically like to do for myself is I don't want to dock it. I want to undock it. Now you want it to go to this other tab that says running devices, right click, and you can go to view mode and say float. And that will take this thing out of that docking thing, and now you can resize it. So now this looks much better, as you can see. So here's the tablet version, and there's the phone version, right? And look at certain differences. Of course, this has all the features that was already there in the web application. Just as a reminder, I'm going to go to that web application to show you how it looked. So as you could see, it had all these different data, and it had a search that you could actually search pretty easily. It was very responsive. And also, it refreshed every 60 seconds, right? So it'll automatically get the latest and greatest data. And one other thing it also did, if the site is down, it loads it automatically from the local file, and it saves it as well as soon as it has the data. So all of this thing has been replicated. So the Android works exactly the same way. You kind of see that it's doing a countdown, and every 60 seconds it will automatically reload it. And this is the search, where you could go and say, I need to look at, let's say, B, and it will automatically filter down the search, right? So it does the same thing. Now I added a couple of more stuff in here, like I added a refresh. If you want to do, on-demand refresh, you can click on it, it will automatically refresh. And of course, this is to close the entire application. Exact same thing we'll have seen in the tablet. Now, the only difference is, this is where the fun begins. This is responsive. On phone, we don't have a lot of space, right? So the only thing we're showing is the name of the crypto, the symbol of it, and what's the value, and how much it's changed in 24 hours. And of course, I added all kinds of colors. If it's down, it's red. If it's up, it's kind of green, so you can see it, right? but it doesn't have all of the information because it's a phone. However, if you go to the tablet version, of course, the layout looks a little different, and it has a lot more information. Of course, it has all the other features that you could see on the other one, because you can do a search, and it will do the search seamlessly, not a problem. As you can see, it searched a bit, and then it can also refresh every 60 seconds, and it has a lot more information. This is where the responsiveness comes in. So for just to show, for different devices, you can actually have separate layout with the same code base. So that's kind of how it works. Let's go look at the code. Now, just a disclaimer that even though I'm using CoinGecko API, I do not work for them. This is just something that I found very easy to use. That's why I used it. And also, this tutorial is not a thorough tutorial of an Android, creating an Android application, because that would be out of scope. There's a lot of bells and whistles and a lot of complication in the Android application. So I will assume that you probably know how to create a simple Android application and has some concept of what are the different things, even though I'll probably touch base with some of the things that Android application has. All right, let's get to the code. Okay, so you will see there's a manifest file. The manifest file is basically kind of like the heart of the Android application. That's where it decides what activity to run and what are the other different configurations that you need. And then these are the Java classes, actually Kotlin/Java, because it's really JVM running at the end, but this is written in Kotlin to keep the code short and simple in a way. All right, so what you will see is there are various directory in the code, and the package that says API, of course, as you could see, that this is what is used to call the CoinGecko API, and I have put like the models, what models I'm calling, and then I'm also putting the actual services. I'm actually using a module called Retro. That is a very neat way to get the call-in API client. So that's that code. The UI is, of course, as it says, it's user interface. This is where you'll have your fragment and basically the actual screen, the interface, right? Where it shows the list of those coins and the information in there, and also the relevant data that eventually calls the APIs to fetch the data. And of course, that's the main activity that's dealing with it. And don't worry about this, it's just a test file that automatically gets created, that automatically runs it. Okay, the other neat thing is, it's important, is these are resources. So the way the Android applications are laid out, of course, you have the application piece, the code piece, kind of like what the actual Kotlin and Java code that would be running. And then you have the associated layouts that are in XML. That's where you get to decide how a screen may look like, what are the things that it has, different types of attribute, features, styles, all of these things you could do it in here. So that's where these goes, and this is where you could make it responsive. Like the activity main, the app bar main, content, and these are all kind of like the main screen that is tied to it. And each of these you will see that there's several versions, right? And this is where the responsiveness becomes. Right? So there's one for a standard one, there's one for a little bit bigger size, 1240, that's for the tablet, and there's one for the phone. So each of these things that you will see, you will have a separate XMLs for various devices, and this is where you can make it responsive. So the thing that I wanted to show you guys is the fragment is actually where, again, this is not an Android tutorial, but in brief, Android doesn't have a main program. It has things called activities. So the very first activity is a main activity, and that's like what it runs. And in the later Android versions, in the past, in the very old days, they used to have only activities. There was no fragment. The fragment, when introduced, those are really lightweight screen components that you can actually use for UI. So here I have only one activity, but the rest of the stuff that I have in frames and will be in frames, well, I only have one. So the activity basically shows a not frame fragment, and all of those things are actually laid out based on a layout in the in this directory right here. And of course, as you could see, different screen has different layouts, right? This one is for the phone, and here where you get to decide what will be shown and what will not be shown, right? And this is the one for the actually the tablet. So of course you could click on the code versus the design to see how it's going to look. Same thing in here as well. Now this one literally shows that I'm going to be using a recycler view. And a recycler view is nothing but kind of like showing a list. But the reason it's called recycler is because it, as you scroll up and down, it automatically knows how to get the fetch the data and show the right thing. So that's what is being used. Now, what's inside that, that's where you will see more differences. So inside the recycler view, it actually loads every list item in a specific layout, and that's this. And you will see there's two separate layouts. One is actually for the phone, and the other one is for the tablet. So this is where we'll pay attention a little bit. If you look at the code, and this is where you will see where I differentiated. So I have an image view where I show the image. If you remember, this is the image, and then I have a text, and I have another text at the bottom. So that's what this is basically. So if you go back here, there's an image view, there's a text view, and there's a text view, and that's what it's showing. However, if I go to the second one, which is meant for the tablet, it's got a lot more stuff to it, right? I have an image view, of course I have the other two text views, and then I got two more text views, right? So going back to this, I have one text, image, and then text, and two more text. That's how you can differentiate between various devices. The layout could be different. Now, as far as the code is concerned, it's actually running the exact code base, right? What happens is, as soon as you start the activity, of course, all the boring stuff gets sets in place, and all the variables and everything. And then eventually it actually comes to the fragment, and this is the one that's doing all the hard works of showing the screens, right? Inside the fragment, what happens is it is loading the recycler view as I showed you on the layout, and it's basically getting recycler view and rendering it. And the recycler view typically uses some kind of adapter, like what it's going to show, and an adapter also kind of ties with some kind of view model object. And the job of the view model object is basically to tie with the recycler view in such a way so that whenever the view model is changed, the data is changed, it automatically refreshes the recycler view. You don't need to do anything extra for that. And that's what this thing is doing. There is some observable, and there is some observing objects that's going on there. This is exactly the design that Android recommends. So what happens is you have a recycler view, and the recycler view needs an adapter to show the data, and then the adapter's data is basically loaded, kind of tied, as you can see, from a view model object. And what does a view model object do? The view model object is the one that is actually going and fetching the data and calling the API. And it's also saying that, look, when the data is updated, make sure you notify all the observers. And one of the observers are, of course, as you can see, that it's the adapter, right? So as soon as the data is fetched, data is loaded, the adapter takes the data, consumes it, and loads it basically, and that's when the recycler view shows up. That's kind of is the concept. Now, if you can go into the details, so this view model provider is calling nothing but this CoinGecko view model, which is right here, and this is where all the fun begins. So in the view model, you will see the one other thing that it does. It's got a whole bunch of methods, and of course they are self-explanatory. The one that we're going to start with is refresh CoinGecko list. This is where it's actually using the retro to call the API data, right? So the very first thing it's doing is basically pinging the the service to see, hey, if it's available or not. If it's successful, the ping is successful, then it's going farther. It's basically saying that, hey, now I'm going to go ahead and get the list of tables. I mean, not tables, list of coins. And this is where it's getting it. And again, it's doing a successful check again. Once it's successful, then the first thing that it's doing is it's basically saying, hey, get me the list from that API and then stick it into this value. What is this value? This value is nothing but what gets updated inside the live data. And this value is just a list of this CoinGecko table. So it's basically an array of all the rows, right? If you think about a table. And then at the end of the day, what happens is when this thing first called, you will notice that there's a constructor, right? And the constructor, what it's doing is it's literally right here, the constructor, it's just calling that. So it's literally initializing the data, right? And then that data, which is denoted by this, is what is being refreshed, right? So let me go back there again, that will make sense. So here it is. So mutable live data dot apply. This is kind of how what you could do is you can inside this block, you can get the data, fetch the data, and when the data is available, you can stick it into the values. This is like doing a set value, and that's where. So this is, you will see the type is mutable data list of that. So this is the actual data. You're just using the data transfer object, the mutable live data, to set it so that the observer can retrieve it, right? So this is being updated, and this is nothing but getting it set into this one right here. And this live data, if you go back to the fragment, this live data is what is being observed. And this is where it says that, hey, anytime an update happens, it's going to call this method. And whenever the new update happens, it's going to go ahead and update the adapter. Adapter submits that new list of CoinGecko table. And then, of course, it refreshes the entire list. So now the question is, where are this refresh thing going on? Like, okay, the first time it gets loaded, but how about this refresh, and how about the search, filter, all that stuff? How is that thing going? Well, before I get into that, let's talk about something else also in the V model that's happening. You see this read from cache, write to cache? What happens is whenever I have a successful fetch, I'm writing that data. This is the exact same thing that we did on the web version as well, right? That's how, even though the site is down, it will never be down. It will automatically get it from the local file. Same thing is happening here. If for some reason something goes wrong, for that reason, what we're doing is, for whenever I'm getting successful data, I am setting it, writing it to the local Android cache, right? Every Android application, again, that's out of scope of this tutorial, but just to let you know that every Android application gets its own personal file space. So that's where I'm writing it actually. So if you go look at the write cache method, what it does, it is literally using the Android's context file directory, and you can put any file that you want, and that's where it's writing the file. So it's writing the file in a JSON format, of course, right? And then it's reading the file back whenever the site is down or something goes wrong. That's what this code is. There's a read from cache, write to cache. So going back there, so whenever there's a successful fetch, it's writing it to save the data, the current data, whatever as of that time. Something goes wrong, it's reading it back to the value, as you can see, the value that gets set into the mutable live data, which is kind of like what is being observed by the adapter. Again, any failure happens, it loads it from the cache. Same thing if ping fails, loads it from the cache. All of this thing is that good. That's it. Now, this other thing that happens, which is also needed, is whenever a search happens, if you look at this thing, whenever I type a search and I type something like bit, right? And it automatically filters down all the list of text that at least has bit in there, right? And of course, if refresh happens, it will refresh in between. So when we go back here, start all over again, search bit, and you will see the only list of data that has bit in there, right? So how does that happen? What happens is there is also a way that you can add a search, and I'm using the Android's recommended way to do it. The adapter is searchable or filterable, right? So there is an adapter that I was mentioned before that every recycle or view needs it to connect to the data model, right? And this adapter, if you look at the class, this adapter class also implements something called filterable, right? That's how you do the search. And filterable is nothing but it needs to implement a method. The method is basically called getFilter, and this is where all fun begins. So getFilter also has to return something that is filterable, right? So there's another little class called CoinGecko filter, as you can see right here, that implements the filter, and it just implements these two methods: perform filtering and perform publish the result. And this is where all the fun happens. Right? This is where it will go ahead and look at the entry that you type in the search, and based on that, filter the list, and then it will publish the list. Now, in order to publish the list, and so that the recycler view can automatically refresh dynamically, what we need to do is we need to have a method in the data model where it can take any list and like a subset of the list and update that mutable live data automatically. So going back to the view model, that's exactly what's happening in this method right here. So that's another method that happens. So this method just gets a list, and then that list is basically being set to that live data, as you can see. So that's kind of it. Of course, there are other stuff that happens in the code as well. I wouldn't say this code is fairly simple. It's fairly complex because there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of stuff happening. The other thing is, these images are in URL. The way the Android works, Android image view does not cannot get an image from the URL. So that's where also some magic happening actually. So let me take you to the code so that you can see. If I go back to the fragment, and that's where I have my adapter classes, and here what happens is inside the adapter, as you can see right here, this is where all the fun thing happens, that it renders all the different items, right? There's image view, there is item text view that associates with the up and down and the price. That's right here, and then there's a high-low and there's a volume, right? If you remember the tablet version of it, right? Tablet version of all of this, but then of course the phone version only has these two, right? So how does that work? Well, of course, in your adapter, you need to variable for all of that, but what's happening is you will notice that when during the render time, and that's where it happens in online view holders, inside there's a try catch block. It's basically saying that, hey, try to set this to text, but don't die. Just set an exception saying it must be a phone, not a tablet, right? That means that for tablet this is going to work fine, but for phone it won't, which is fine because phone doesn't have those fields in there. So that's what's happening. And then I was talking about rendering an image, and this is the magic method that does it. Process image URL. So by default, image view does not load an image directly from an URL. It can load from an URI, but that's from local only. So again, I had to do some mumbo jumbo here. I had to create this little method right here. What that method does is it literally calls an URL, open the stream, gets the bitmap data, and then sets this as a bitmap, of course, using the bitmap factory. Now, if you're writing a commercial application, I wouldn't suggest loading an image like that from an internet. That's probably not the best thing. So the best thing to do is, in those cases, maybe you wanted to have this image locally and somehow map it, like with that symbol or name or something like that. So that would be the fastest way to go. But again, I just wanted to show that it can be done. So that's why I did it this way. That's about it. So this is kind of all, and of course there are other things, a lot of, as I said, other moving parts. Feel free to poke around and look at the code. There are other stuff to it that I haven't gone too much details, but I'll just mention briefly. Like this API service that I'm using, Retro, only has two methods, as you could see. One calling the CoinGecko APIs, the market watch values to get the list, and the other one is ping. And then, of course, each of these things are mapped with different JSON objects that is literally mapped with the record objects right here. One is the CoinGecko table, which is all this, and the other one is the ping response. So all this thing is happening there. And just a quick peek at the API. So this is the API that I'm calling, and I will put this link, of course, on the references and the description below as well. And the other link that I would suggest is, maybe if you are interested in creating your first Android application by yourself, not to load something that's already there, you can follow this tutorial as well. That will definitely help you. Okay, that's it for today. If this video has added any value to your skill set, I will really appreciate if you can subscribe and also hit the bell icon so that you can get notified for subsequent videos that are coming in the future. Well, you all have a great time and have a good holidays. Happy New Year. Bye.